I'm going to show you in the most simple way possible how we are going to quadruple or 4 times process our ores in Mekanism. Now, what I like to do in my guides is use wool to show production lines. The red wool line here is the production line of the ore. You can see here we put in 4 times ore here, and then it comes into this machine and the ore will simply travel down this red line. The only difference between tripling, quadrupling, and quintupling is at some points down this red line, we're going to add stuff on to the side into some of the machines. And I think that's an easy way to remember it. So what I want you to do is start off with a chemical injection chamber. Just make these machines rather than worrying about the individual steps to start with. So make a chemical injection chamber. Put a bit of space between it if you're a beginner, just to give yourself some leeway here. Maybe a bit more space than I've given. Make a chemical injection chamber and have the front of it output with, let's say, a logistical transporter, if you are only using Mekanism, into a purification chamber. So a chemical injection chamber into a purification chamber. Do the same into a crusher. Then into an enrichment chamber, and then into an energized smelter. And after that, you can have a chest or whatever, wherever you're putting your ingots. So basically, the reason I've walled this off into different sections is to show you where we're doing what. So to double our ores, we're actually going to put the ores into an enrichment chamber and pass them through to the energized smelter. Triple them, we're then going to add a purification chamber and a crusher. So starting off then, we've got the energized smelter smelting our ores. We're adding onto that an enrichment chamber. You simply can put the ore in here to double it, or there's dirty osmium dust coming from further down the line. You then want to make a crusher. Again, nothing is happening in here apart from the ore passing through. Then we get to the purification chamber, where things start to get a tad more interesting. And at this point, we are tripling our ore. So again, the ore would come in here. What you want to do at the purification chamber part is, you can see here I've got a blue line. This is the oxygen line. If you only want to use Mekanism, you want to use a pump, but you can use any way to get water, and pump it into an electrolytic separator. This is the front of the machine here. If I can get on top of it. This is the front of the machine here. Out of the left will come hydrogen. Out of the right will come oxygen. So you pump in water, and the left is going to be hydrogen, and the right is going to be oxygen. So we are pumping out oxygen from the electrolytic separator into the purification chamber. You can dump excess on both of these to make sure neither one overflows, and pump in water. So again, to triple our ores, pumping in water to an electrolytic separator and pushing the oxygen into a purification chamber. And after that, it will be a crusher, an enrichment chamber, and a smelter. And that will triple your ores. Let's then add the quadrupling step, which is obviously what you're watching this video for. The only extra machine on the red line, the ore production line, is actually going to be a chemical injection chamber. And we're going to put in hydrogen chloride. Making the hydrogen chloride is the complex part. So you're going to put in your ores into the chemical injection chamber, and it will literally, the ores will just go down this line. So how do we make hydrogen chloride? Well, you are going to need a thermal evaporation chamber or block. I have done a separate tutorial on this if you don't know how to make it, but for the purpose of this video, I will go through it. You're going to make thermal evaporation blocks 4 by 4 and then build it up. You don't have to put these advanced solar generators on, but you can leave the corners off like this. The advanced solar generators will help speed up the process. You're going to make some valves here, valve, and a controller. That's all you need, okay? Basically, you want to put this either in a hot biome, or if you're in a cold biome like I am, you can see the snow, you're going to want to use a resistive heater to heat it up. So I'm using energy into a resistive heater, and I can type in here 500, and it will try and make it to 500, Fahrenheit. And with a thermodynamic conductor, I'm pumping into one of the valves heat. Through another valve, I'm pumping in water. If we click in the controller, I'm turning water and heat into brine. So again, this is the thermal evaporator. So power into a resistive heater, thermodynamic conductors into a valve, and water into another valve. 4x4 controller, water equals brine. From another valve, I'm outputting the brine into an electrolytic separator, just like when we done our oxygen and hydrogen. Except in here, I'm separating the brine into sodium and chlorine. We want to dump the excess sodium. We literally do not care about it. And we want to take out of the right-hand side the chlorine. The chlorine is going to go into the right-hand side of a chemical infuser. You see here the chlorine. And to be very clear here, the hydrogen chloride is a dark blue route. The dark blue route is the hydrogen chloride route. Remember, red is our ore route. In the left-hand side of our chemical infuser, we're actually going to use the hydrogen that we got earlier from step 3, our electrolytic separator. So the grey route is the hydrogen route. If this is confusing, I'm going to go through it all again. Don't worry, just stick with me here. So hydrogen going in the left and chlorine going in the right. Together, it makes hydrogen chloride. Pump that out of the front and into the chemical injection chamber. And we have officially quadrupled our ores. Let's put in here some iron so we can see it in process. Or iron. We can see the raw iron is getting infused with hydrogen chloride. It's then going to come into our purification chamber. So from the chemical injection chamber with hydrogen chloride straight into our purification chamber. Just need oxygen from the electrolytic separator, remember, into the purification chamber where it will make shards. That will turn into clumps. They will go into the crusher, where the clumps will go into dirty dust. The crusher goes into the enrichment chamber, where the dirty dust goes into clean dust, I think. And then the clean dust goes into ingots. So working it back, a smelter, an enrichment chamber, a crusher, needing literally nothing extra, and then a purification chamber, where you're adding in oxygen from the right-hand side of an electrolytic separator. Going on to the 4th step, we have hydrogen chloride, again coming back into our purification chamber. To make hydrogen chloride, we're going to take our hydrogen from earlier and put that into a chemical infuser with chlorine. How do we get chlorine? Well, again, we're going to use our thermal evap. Heat and water going in the valves, with a controller and a 4x4, making it as high as you want pretty much. Turn water and heat into brine. Pull out the brine with another valve into an electrolytic separator, getting rid of the sodium, and the chlorine again goes into our chemical infuser. So hydrogen from earlier and the chlorine we've just spoken about going into a chemical infuser makes hydrogen chloride, and that goes into the chemical injection chamber. Ores go in the chemical injection chamber and make shards. They then travel into the purification chamber, where shards go into clumps. They then travel into the crusher, where clumps go into dirty dust. They then travel into the enrichment chamber, where dirty dust is clean dust. And then that gets cooked up into ingots. And that is how you quadruple or 4 times your ores in Mekanism. It is quite complex, so I do hope that made sense to you watching. If you need help with how to make oxygen or hydrogen, I've got a separate video on my channel. I will link these in the description, by the way. If you want to know how to use the electric pump, I've got a video for that. If you want to know how to use the, I forget what it's called, the thermal evaporation chamber or block, I have another separate individual tutorial for that as well, and I will link all of these in the description of this video. If it was helpful, do click subscribe, of course. I've got loads of other Mekanism videos in the playlist you now see on screen, and you can also join my Patreon as well to support the channel if you wish.